Hello and welcome. I'm Kamla. My guest today is filmmaker Paul McGuigan. He has a new film out called Film Stars Don't Die in Liverpool. He has also directed quite a few films and TV series. One of them is BBC's Sherlock, the one that got us all hooked into Sherlock Holmes. But first we'll take a look at a trailer from the film and then our interview with filmmaker Paul McGuigan.
Hey, you're the next door guy, right?
Which makes you the girl next door. What's her name?
Gloria Grahame. Big name in black and white films.
Never heard of her.
Won an Oscar too, if memory serves.
Big fans of Gloria, we were. Me and your mum.
Is this like a date, or...? What kind of a person hangs out in a joint where you're labeled on the lampshade, anyway?
Miss Graham?
Could you take me to Liverpool? I could get better there. Bella could take care of me.
We never expected that Gloria Grahame in our kitchen.
Welcome to San Francisco.
Thank you, it's great to be here.
I guess we should blame you for getting us all hooked to Sherlock.
Well, I was the first director in, and we did create the show, but of course we didn't know we were creating what we were creating. Because, actually, when we first started Sherlock, and he'll hate me for saying this, but I didn't really know who Benedict was. I had saw a couple of films which I loved, and I knew he was a good actor, but I didn't know, he wasn't the Benedict we all know now, he wasn't that guy. So I wasn't really aware of what we were doing. But he's a great actor, and Martin Freeman, so we had a good time. But the great thing about Sherlock is it's a 90-minute show.
Almost like a film.
It is a movie. I always say to everyone, we're making a film, it just happens to have less time and less money, but we're making a movie, and that's how we approached it.
So the two questions that come up with reference to Sherlock and also with reference to Film Stars Don't Die in Liverpool is your fascination with doors and wallpaper.
Well, actually, the wallpaper thing, here's the thing, right? In Scotland, where I grew up in the 70s, in late 60s and 70s, it always bemused me that the working class life was always portrayed very black and white. Because my house was anything but black and white. Because it's only when you get some cash, some money, that you end up decorating your house the way you want to do it. Everyone matches. Whereas when I grew up in Scotland, we had swirly carpets, and there was a different carpet for each room. There was wallpapers everywhere. That was just the style of the day. So I've always liked wallpaper because I used to be a photographer, so I've always tried to contextualize everything that you shoot, like a frame, And for me, wallpaper just is much more interesting than
it gives you
black
texture.
Canvas, a texture, but also gives it character. It gives character, and people think I'm obsessed with it, and maybe I am, because I actually used to make the joke that if you come into my house, I'll flick on pornography because I'm actually I'm downloading wallpaper sites, because I'm actually quite obsessed with the wallpaper sites.
Oh, you are?
Well, I am, because there's stories to be told in that, and you have to be very careful about how you choose it. In Film Stars, it was there because it is a period detail. It's a very working class family. From Liverpool in Scotland, where I grew up, it's very, very similar. And the working class family, and we actually had photographs of Peter Turner's real house and the real kitchen. And that's the real wallpaper. We actually found the exact same wallpaper.
So the film, Film Stars Don't Die in Liverpool, is based on Peter Turner's memoir.
Yeah.
And he had, should I say, an affair, because you portray it as a love story, where he met
a love story.
The Oscar-winning actress Gloria Grahame. Most of us don't know about her. Did you know about her?
I did, because I love that genre. I love all the film noir movies that she was in. But that was the whole point of the film, almost, because he didn't know about her either when he met her. And then this was the days before you could actually Google someone. So the film's all about, as the audience get to know her the way that Peter gets to know her. And that's nice, I think. It's a nice balance, because you're right, the audience don't, I'm sure some of them know, but are not really aware of who she is. And my goal was always to have people walk out the theatre to Google her and to catch up with who she is and just be fascinated by her, because it's not a biography of Gloria Grahame, it's a love story between Peter Turner and Gloria Grahame. And it's an extraordinary love story.
Yeah, and I think the landlady that in the house that they first met says she was a big name in black and white and not color.
Not color,
Yeah, so that was very interesting. So the dialogue is very interesting in the film because it gives you pointers as to where it's heading in some ways, you know.
Yeah.
And you described the film as I don't know whether you described it or Peter Bradshaw described it. I'm confused because I did read Peter Bradshaw's
his review of it?
Yeah, his review. A loving and touching film about an ordinary man and an extraordinary actress. You know, so how did you get that? It was a very beautiful film. There was nothing complicated about it. It was a love story, and you showed the humaneness of Peter Turner's family and Peter Turner himself, and which is why she felt comfortable that she wanted to go to his house, and that's where she wanted to pass away.
Well, I always say it's a story about love, both of their love for each other, but the family's love for their son and for her. And you know, Gloria had a very complicated life. It's an incredibly complex life, and not such a happy family life. I think she saw in Peter's family a kind of a real anchoring of what family should be like, and she loved his mum and his dad, and that's genuine, and but that's also the love story that happens in the film as well. You know, and we had Julie Walters and Ken Cranham playing the mum and dad, and Stephen Graham playing his brother, and these are amazing accomplished actors, you know. And they just understood that dynamic because they're all from working class backgrounds as well. And it's not solely just working class, but it's a very typical working class trait is their close family bonds, you know.
Lilliputian working class.
Yeah, you know, but it's
no, Liverpudlian, not
Liverpudlian. Liverpudlian.
Liverpudlian.
Yeah, I know, it's a funny word.
Yeah, Liverpudlian.
But it's also a Glaswegian trait. It's also any working class household will have that dynamic, and it's also the idea that he has family. See, because when we made the movie, the first thing that Annette Bening said to me is, I don't want us to be about an old woman dying in a room, you know, because Gloria would have hated that, because Gloria was anything but. So it was fantastic to make a film about a woman of a certain age who's still sexual and still vibrant, and you don't particularly like her for a little bit because you don't really understand why she's acting the way she is, and the film kind of then makes you understand her and makes you understand why she was trying to push him away, and that's where the drama is, and it's also where the emotion is, you know. And so you can actually make a film about a love story that isn't cheesy and doesn't rely on sentimentality, and that's what we're trying to make in the film. And when you've got actors like Annette Bening and Jamie Bell, you have got two actors that understand that, and they want to act and they want to do it, and they want to live it. You know, so this, for me, it's been my favourite experience of making a film.
How did you become attached to this film? Because this film was in gestation for 20 odd years.
Yeah, it's a long time.
Because Barbara Broccoli?
Yeah, Barbara Broccoli is the producer of the film.
James Bond, we all know her from the James Bond.
Yeah, she does that little franchise, the James Bond franchise.
Yeah, the little franchise.
Well, the story about the film is quite interesting because Barbara and Peter Turner, who wrote the book, have been great friends for many, many years, even before he wrote the book. So she actually went on a double date with Gloria Grahame and Peter, with her then boyfriend at the time as well. She was 17 or 18. So. And when Gloria died, she really understood the effect it had on Peter. She could see it. And so she actually encouraged him to write something down. And what I love about Peter's memoir is it's done through memory. It's not done through time. It's not really done like September 16, 3 o'clock, we were here, we did this. It's all about one memory going into another, and it also kind of cuts around the timeline, and I really liked that. And so I was at a screening of a friend's film, and the other producer is Colin Baines, and Colin was looking at me across the room, and I was like, do I owe him money or something? Why is he looking at me like that? And he just went, I've just suddenly had a brilliant idea, and I was like, what is it? He says, I've got the script, I want to send it to you. And then he mentioned it was Barbara, and Barbara and I had been friends for quite a while.
Oh.
Because she was interested in me to do a Bond movie back
Casino
in the day.
Royale.
Yeah, so...
Why didn't you do that?
Well, it wasn't my decision not to do it. It was the studio at the time where, like, we've got a new Bond coming in, to have a new director just seems weird. So you know, and they made the right decision in the end. It was a good film.
So are you going to be doing the next Bond film, because there's a lot of rumors?
No, well, there are always going to be rumours because I worked with Barbara Broccoli and we've made a good movie and we got on really well. She's the best. If I could work with Barbara Broccoli every day, I would be very happy.
So as a producer, what is it that she gives you, because you're the director? How is she an ideal producer for you?
Well, Barbara Broccoli is a proper producer. Unfortunately, in my career, I haven't had that all the time. Sometimes I have, but it's actually more rare than it is anything else. And a producer is a companion. It should be a companion. It should be someone who has the same vision for the film and who encourages you to think big or to think true to the story rather than thinking all the time about money and about how much it's going to cost.
So she has your back.
Very much so. And she's just an amazing woman, and I don't know if you ever met her, but she's a force of nature, but in a really positive way. And then she was on set crying, next to me every day. She'd just be crying her eyes out because she was so moved by the story. She's so in love with the story, and that's why it's taken 22 years, because she wanted to make sure it had a good home and that the right people were involved. And Annette was too young then, and she knew Annette should be the person for it. So Annette and her have been talking about it for many, many years before I even got involved. You know. Obviously, Jamie Bell was only 7 years old, so he wasn't really ready.
So Annette Bening first heard about it, I think, when she made Grifters.
The Grifters was Stephen Frears.
Yes.
And she was kind of thinking about her character in that film. And she wasn't really sure how to approach it, and Stephen said to her, go and watch Gloria Grahame films. And that's who she based her whole performance on. So it's nice it has that kind of connection, you know. And the film actually has lots of those kind of connections.
So she looks stunningly like Gloria Grahame, Annette Bening. So two things that came to my mind is, one, she's been wanting to do this film for 20 odd years.
Yes.
So she was a fund of information. She knew every quirk, I think, of Gloria Grahame.
She did, yeah.
So, two, Jamie Bell, I guess, didn't know much about her.
No.
You know, so they had that freshness in the sense that he genuinely didn't know who she was.
Yeah, exactly.
How did you deal with that, in the sense that, because Annette knew, like, she was a living, breathing embodiment of this actress, even before the film was made. Was it easy for you to work with that? Because she knew, you know, as a director, probably didn't have to tell her a whole lot.
It's a good question. I think that the way that Annette works is she's a student of character, so she needs to know everything. Even though, as I said, her film's not about Gloria Grahame, it's about them. She just really wanted to know so much more than I did, even as a filmmaker. I didn't need to go into the background of Gloria too much. She wanted to know every question. So the relationship with Peter Turner and Annette was very important, because nobody else can tell the truth better than the man who was actually there and who actually wrote the book and whose point of view the film's from. And so that was an interesting dynamic. But you know, for me as a filmmaker, what I love about Annette Bening and Jamie Bell is that a lot of the days I didn't say very much. And that to me is when you know you're doing well, because I don't have to act being a director, I don't have to talk a lot, I don't have to, in my head, I don't have to, it's not me acting, I'm actually directing, so I'm concentrating and I'm thinking. But I don't have to keep going up every 2 minutes and tell them
they knew what to do.
Well, I don't have to tell them how wonderful they are. That's not the kind of people they are, you know. I would only, when I ever say something, it has to be meaningful, or it has to have some context to it. So I'm not the director that goes about, you know, slapping everyone in the back and saying how wonderful they are. And so it was nice. I think my style and Annette's style and Jamie's style really married together very well, you know. And because when you have someone who's doing some really quite hard things as an actor, you know, she is dying during the film, and that's not a spoiler, it's in the title of the film, right? When that's happening, you've got to understand that you have to be very, very, very respectful of what she's doing and how she's approaching it. And she is much more method than a lot of actors I've worked with, because if we're doing a scene where she's actually really on her deathbed, she would lie in that bed the whole day and she would not speak to anybody. She would not talk to one single person.
She'd become that.
Yeah, but not in a difficult way, just very quietly, would just do her thing. And then suddenly if we were doing, there's a dance sequence in the film, with the
I was
first
going to
meeting.
ask you about the dance.
Well,
That
I mean,
was one of the
that's-
best scenes.
Yeah, no, but that's what I'm saying. But then she would get up and she would be so energetic the whole day, and so that's her way of working, you know. But that wasn't. There was 2 scenes in the film that we shot handheld. There was the dance sequence, and there's a sequence where she kicks him out of the house. And the reason why there were only 2 sequences that were handheld is because I didn't know what was going to happen, because we never rehearsed any of those scenes. Deliberately didn't rehearse them. And I deliberately didn't direct them. I just said, here's the record you're going to dance to. Dance around here and we'll cover it from there. And they never rehearsed either. And they just started to dance with
so
each
what
other.
we see is what...
Yeah, I didn't know it was going to happen. And so, you know, Ulla Ponticus, who was my DP, Ulla was operating the camera and she just danced with them. She just got around them and we only did it in 2 takes. You know.
That's one of the best scenes in the film.
But that's sometimes what happens in movies, where you can be very detailed about everything. You can be very
spontaneous.
You can be unless you can keep a room for the spontaneity. There's no point doing it. You know.
Okay, I just quickly want to go to the opening scene. It was very beautifully done. How much time did you spend composing how that scene is going to be? Because it's something that, if you're a creative person, you know how actors get, how they prepare themselves, you know, and they have, all of them almost always have a routine of how they unpack their makeup kit. They'll have some talisman, they'll have some favorite thing.
That's right, yeah.
A lucky charm. So you captured that very well.
Well, the opening scene is very important to the film because the opening scene is basically her life. She says you're identifying her through the pieces that she takes out.
You're unpacking her life.
Yeah, and that's what she carried with her. And we did a lot of research to ask what she had in her purse, you know. And she had the little compact from Bogart. She had the little thing with the music box on it. She had these little things. So, and of course, Annette, being from the stage actor anyway, she exactly knew the kind of routine that she had to do. So, it wasn't so much highly prepared, but we knew exactly what we had to achieve, because we also knew that we wanted to bookend the film with it. So he puts back her life and the pieces of her life. He puts it away and he tucks it away, and I always find that the most moving part of the film, really, where here's this boy who's totally in love with this woman, and he's actually he knows that she's going to die, and he's packing away her life, you know.
I want to move back. I want to go back to your childhood. You grew up in Scotland.
Don't do that.
You grew up in Scotland.
I still live in Scotland.
Oh, well, but you're most of the time spending it in America.
Depends what I'm doing, to be honest.
Okay. Yeah. So you grew up in Scotland in a town where Sheena Easton came from.
Sheena Easton, we love Sheena Easton, but actually they had a poll of famous people from Bellshill, which is the town I come from. And I was number 6 and Sheena was number 7. So I was very happy about that. Though number 5 was actually, wasn't even a person, it was a building. So so we can't really take much from that. But it's interesting, you know, where I came from in Bellshill is it's a hot spot of creativity. I don't really know why. I don't know.
There are a lot of musicians.
Musicians come from there. A lot of musicians come from there, especially during, you know, the sort of indie period. It's just a very atypical town, which is only 10 miles away from the centre. It's the
Glasgow.
Centre from Glasgow. But it's a mining community.
Mining community.
Yeah,
okay. Yeah. What did you think you would become when you were an adult?
I thought I was going to be a priest, which people always laugh at knowing me now. But
you went to a Catholic school?
I went to Catholic school. I wanted to be a priest, but I had a really bad speech impediment when I was a kid. And I mean, it was terrible. I would actually prefer not to talk. And the priest who I told I wanted to be a priest turned around and went, "You can't be a priest, you can't communicate with people." And so that always stayed with me, you know.
He really said that?
Yeah, he said that, yeah.
Was he a kind priest?
The priests were never really kind at that time, you know, when I was a kid. Because you still had punishment at school, you know, they still strap you and all that stuff. So we grew up with
dunce
nuns.
Cap, you wore a dunce cap.
Yeah, the priest used to slap you and kick you in the ass, and yeah, it was very physical.
Extend your hand and
yeah. I mean, I was never abused or anything like that.
No,
because
yeah,
there's lots of people that were, you know, but that was never my thing. But I just.
So you ruled out being a priest.
Yeah, but I was interested in it. I mean, even now, I'm kind of interested in people that devote themselves to something their whole lives to something like that. So I was interested, even though I wasn't particularly interested in the Catholic faith, really. I think it's so flawed now that I'm not a believer. I don't go to church or anything. But I was always very fascinated about people that have that devotion to something. I still am, and I still respect it. As much as I don't particularly maybe agree with the philosophies of some of those things. And so yeah, but to be a priest was also about to be devout.
So what did you want to become then?
Then I was a photographer. I was very lucky. I had a very supportive family. And my mum bought me a Pentax K1000 camera when I was 16 years old, which was quite a big deal because it was quite expensive for her.
Yeah, Pentax was.
Yeah, but it was a good camera. It was a working camera. And I was very clever at school. I was very good at school. I was a good student. But I didn't want to go to university. I knew I just didn't want to go into academia. And my parents saw that, and so they bought me this camera because they knew I was interested in the kind of visual arts. And then I became a photographer very, very quickly. And I actually won the Polaroid Young Photographers of the Year when I was 17 years old. Which I was the youngest person to ever do that.
So who are some of the photographers that have influenced you?
I'm a big collector of photography, I adore Robert Capa because he also, his photographs meant something, He was a photo reportage photographer. He was the beginning of Magnum. They call it Magnum after him because he used to drink magnums of champagne. And it's a great story. His story's a great story. It's Spanish Civil War right through. And I was always really fascinated by people that were actually there and were willing to put themselves in the front line, And even though I became the opposite of that as a photographer, I became a fashion photographer. So I was very...
You became a fashion photographer?
Oh yeah, for sure, yeah.
So
because because
there's a lot of money there?
Well, it's a job, it's a living, It's really hard to make a living as a photographer. And again, you have to be devout to something. You have to really be passionate about what you're doing. And I liked fashion photography because it was kind of frivolous. It was the opposite of what Robert Capa was doing, right? But it was frivolous, and I liked that world, especially when I was so young. So I got immersed very quickly into the world of fashion when I was 20 years old. I was working for Vogue magazine. I was working for all these magazines.
Does it explain your obsession with style? Because when you look at Sherlock, when you look at Scandal, when you look... Even this film, Film Stars Don't Die in Liverpool, there's a certain look about the film. Like when I look at the title for this film and with Sherlock, they're almost identical. They hark back to the silent film era in some sense because you have that burnt images, when the film gets burned, little burn marks. Yes. So... is that how you developed an eye for that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, being a photographer has helped me immensely understand how powerful the camera can be. How the camera tells the story as much as I do or the actors do, And so I was always very comfortable with the camera. I was always very comfortable being on set. The thing that I had to learn was how to work with actors. But for me, I always have a frame, have one single frame for every scene.
Yes, I noticed that.
And that's what I go for. I kind of go, right, if I can get that frame, even though the actors are walking around and doing stuff, if I can settle on something, then that's how I get through each scene, that's how I understand. And then it becomes the style. I mean, when I was doing the documentaries even, when I first started making films, I was making documentaries, but they're always very stylized. And so I think it's really important as a filmmaker that you have a style,
So it's a montage of carefully composed photographs actually in some ways.
It is, but it's also... Again, the camera, I learned very early on how powerful the camera can be,
When you say how powerful the camera can be, what does it mean?
Well, here's the thing, if you were shooting me now, you could be incredibly close up, a big extreme close up, or you could be down the other side of the room. To be honest with you, the other side of the room is probably much more interesting, but we have a convention here where you have your camera, I have my camera, and I understand the convention. And
I would actually like it to be on the other side because it would give us, give the viewers...
It's cinematic because the camera can because if you have a wide shot here, then people can see the room, and then they start to fill in the gaps of where are we, why are we here in this room, Why is the camera not moving in closer? There must be some reason for that. There's a tension to it, you know. And so you can create tension, you can create moods, you can create, and it seems simple and whatever, but it's actually, it is a real art form to understand the power of the camera and understand the power of what that can do. And also, in this film, for instance, it's the first time I've really not moved the camera. You know, the camera doesn't move very much in this movie.
Yes.
And you talked about doors before. I felt like I was observing something. I felt very much the voyeur into their relationship, but respected it, so that I always stood at the door. My wide shots are always from the door, because it's almost like you haven't been invited in yet, because this is an intimate moment between these two people. And so I wanted the audience to feel that as well.
Okay.
But there was not really, I mean, to be honest with you, I think I've got to this stage in my career where I don't really feel I have to show off anymore. There was a point when you first start where you think, as I said before, you feel like you've got to pretend to be the director, you know. And so I just don't feel I have to show off anymore, and I feel like a film like this really captures that for me, you know.
My final question is for somebody who wants to become a filmmaker or photographer. What advice would you give them? Because you had a priest who said, you know, you can't become a priest because he had communication problems.
My advice to everyone, and I always go in, sometimes I go in and I speak to young film students, and my advice is always, look at me, look how I've done it, and then get to know me, and you get how simple I am as a person. I'm not the world's greatest intellect, but I am who I am, and if I can do it, you can do it. I always say that to people, if I can do it, anyone can do it. Because
hard work.
It's also, you have to have an ego the size of the world, because you have to understand that if you don't fight for yourself, no one will. And don't worry about getting people to say no, because you're going to get that. It's inevitable. People are going to say no all the time. And it's so hard to make a film. You know, Barbara took 22 years to make this movie because people were saying no to her, and she didn't take no for an answer, you know.
And she's Barbara Broccoli of the 007 fame.
Yeah, but I mean, if she's getting said no to, you can imagine how hard it is for anybody to make a film, for young students to come out and make a movie that is a part of what they really want to say and is something that they really want to achieve. I keep saying to them, no is a positive answer. The worst answer you can ever have in the world is maybe. My grandmother said that to me when I told her I was going on a date once with a girl. I said, I'm maybe going on a date, and she went, you know maybe means no, right? Oh. and I've always thought about that, you know. So I always say for an actor, if an actor turns me down and he says no, then that to me is a positive answer, because you can move on. And that's what this business is about. No, never think no is a bad thing. No is just a no. It's a good, positive answer. I can get on with my life. I can do something else, you know.
Thank you so much for your time.
So thank you. It was such a nice to talk to you.
Thank you.
Good.
And thank you for watching. If you missed any of our shows, you can watch them on our YouTube channel. We'll be back again next week with another episode of our show. Until then, goodbye.